सॉल्यूशंस भी मुझे भेजिए.
All right, moving on. Well, Donald Trump has not announced the extension of sanctions waiver on Russian seaborne oil, allowing it to lapse. This is expected to usher in trouble for many countries, especially India, who have been on Donald Trump's target for importing Russian oil. India has emerged as the top consumer of Russian seaborne crude, and purchases have reached record highs in April and May. Trump had announced a month-long temporary extension on import of Russian oil last month to ease the global oil crisis since the Strait of Hormuz remains choked. The expiration of deadline comes one day after US Senators John Shaheen and Elizabeth Warren urged Trump to not extend the waiver. The primary argument being it is providing critical revenue to fund Russia's military operations. So how does this impact India is the big question, and can we navigate another Trump-made crisis since Russia has committed to send more oil to India? We're going to talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show is Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat, Mr. Raymond Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce. He joins us all the way from Washington, D.C. Mr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, President of CDPR, and last but by no means the least, Dr. Sharath Kohli, Senior Economist, joins us on the program as well. All right. Mr. Vickery, I'll begin with you. Well, there's already uncertainty brewing as to whether the Strait of Hormuz is going to open in the next few days or not. Even if it does, it's going to take months for the routine that existed before the 27th of February to come back, if not years. If Donald Trump puts more sanctions on India and other countries who buy oil from Russia, how dangerous is this worldwide economic crisis going to deepen, according to you, sir?
Well, thanks for having me. It's going to deepen very considerably. The United States and India should be in the business of waging peace in regard to Ukraine. The war caused by the invasion of Russia, the worst transgression of the UN Charter in some 80 years, has resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths. People are being killed at the rate of 10,000 a month or so. So peace needs to be waged here, but it's not going to be waged the way in which President Trump is going about this. You need to have a strategy, you need to have partners, you need to have principles. And part of the strategy has to be, if you're going to concentrate on oil and petroleum, is what happens to the rest of the world as you pursue sort of willy-nilly and without consultation and without adequate alternatives for countries like India. It should be the case that President Trump and his administration would consult with the other great democracies of the world, particularly India, Japan, and so forth, who are radically affected by this. This is no way to go forward, especially when you see that China is actually the largest importer of petroleum products from the Soviet Union. And so far as I can figure, that in the recent summit, this issue wasn't even raised with China. So how is it that you take it out on your friends like India, Indonesia, and so forth, and you give China a free pass? That's not a strategy. It's not having partners, and there's no principle to it. So what President Trump needs to do is to step back from this, and there's every indication that, in fact, he might. Because in the past, the Secretary of the Treasury has reversed himself on 3 or 4 days' notice. So you never know what's going to happen. But this is a very harmful, a very deleterious way to approach international relations, particularly with a long-term partner like India.
You're quite right, Sir Ambassador Mukherjee. It is already a very intricate situation. Do you think that Donald Trump with or without the gumption that he's exercised in the past, is likely to convolute the situation even further?
Well, after hearing Mr. Vickery, I was reflecting on what Henry Kissinger had said many years ago when he said that it's difficult to be America's friend. In fact, it is very dangerous in Trump's era to be America's friend because America's friends are treated like enemies and India and America's enemies are treated like America's best friends. So you have a situation where as Mr. Vickery said, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, sir, this issue was not even on the agenda between Xi Jinping and President Trump. In fact, all the lavish praise which Trump gave Xi was not reciprocated at all by the host, at all. And now we are in a situation where President Trump and his entire administration knows how much we have been affected by the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. What does he want from India? Does he want our economy to collapse? Does he want 1.4 billion people to be sent back 4 decades into poverty? Or does he want us to break the sanctions? And if we break the sanctions, then he'll come down heavily on us and start treating us like a pariah nation. So where does that place India? Between a rock and a hard place. Should we defy him and continue to buy Russian oil because we are a democracy and we have to first think of the benefit of our 1.4 billion people? Or should we just fall into line and be without oil and natural gas until President Trump decides how to reopen the Straits of Hormuz? I think this is a very shabby way of treating friends and allies. And I don't think at the end of the day, by the time the midterms come, and I hope he loses, I don't think America will have very many strategic partners this way. Since, as I said, he treats his friends like enemies and enemies like friends. So we are in a really difficult situation. I do hope and pray that in a few days' time, better sense will prevail and the waiver will continue.
Dr. Kohli, the ground reality, what does that tell you? You know, if India has already, the Prime Minister has made his austerity speech as well. You know, internationally, things are looking very grim. You know, airlines are cancelling flights, trade is suffering, tourism is suffering, exports, imports, you know, are staring down the barrel as well. Would this be the last nail in the coffin if Donald Trump decides that tariffs should be imposed on India for buying oil from the Russians? And should we actually comply with what Donald Trump is saying? We are an independent country. We have the right, every right to take our very own decision. And exactly like Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee put it, that we have to take care of the 1.4 billion people in this country before we have to be responsible for what Trump feels.
Good evening, Vineet, to you, my fellow panelists and the viewers. Well, I think I love what Ambassador Mukherjee said, that the friends are treated like enemies. Enemies are treated like friends. What a classic statement in the given scenario. How true this is looking like when he visited China. And as Mr. Vickery spoke, that he didn't even mention that. He's giving them a free pass. You know, he's trying to target his own friends. Now, my big contention here is who is Donald Trump to whom we should listen to? Who is he? You know, we are a sovereign country. We will do whatever is good for our people. And for the information of viewers here, even when the sanctions were there before the month of March, we were still buying oil from Russia. When did we stop it, first of all? So whether his waiver expires or it does not expire, I really don't think the government we have in place at this moment in the country is going to listen to all that crap which is coming from there. I'm sorry to say that, but because this is direct attack on our sovereignty. And I think it'll be better for Donald Trump, Mr. Vickery would agree with me, to look back at his own country for a moment. You know, I know America may be the largest producer of oil, Vinny, at this point of time. Look at the gas prices. I'm sure you know, Mr. Vickery knows better than anybody else that every time he visits a petrol station, you know, $4.50 to $5. It used to be $3 a gallon before that. And this is happening to the largest producer of oil, the man who says this is Strait of Trump, not Strait of Hormuz. This is happening to the country who says we don't need oil from anybody else. We are self-sufficient. Go and get it opened yourself. If anybody wants to get Strait of Hormuz open, go and get it open yourself. We are not going to help you. Why the hell then is your own country paying a higher price for oil? Because you have to respect the prices. And I think inflation in America is building up. It's catching up. Grocery bills are up. Cost of living is up. No new investments are coming into America unless there's a gun on the head. Things are going from bad to worse in America itself. So his own, what this will do effectively, because coming from the world of economics, I can tell you, tomorrow morning, when the crude oil market around the world opens, because the commodity markets, they remain closed on the weekends, spot market trading continues round the clock without any break. But then commodity markets, they remain closed on the weekends. So tomorrow, obviously, crude is going to open higher. It closed at about between 106 to 109. At this point of time, it was 109. So it will probably go higher. And what is this going to do? This will affect the economies around the world. And Prime Minister rightly said from Netherlands that, many people in this world will sink into poverty because this will take away the jobs. It will lead to closure of businesses, industries, and people would be jobless. Fall of demand around the world. This is basic economics. Fall of demand means closure of industries. Layoffs around the world. So I think this is a recipe for disaster. And I have a feeling, Vineet, that was he scared when he went to China to speak to China? The secretaries were sent at the airport, I am told, for the president of the most powerful country and the most powerful person on earth. There were some secretaries who came to picking him up. I don't know if they were office boys or something. I don't know who came to the airport to receive him. So that was the welcome given to him. Some photo ops were there, some gifts were given, which is a normal protocol when any head of state visits you. But then nothing beyond that. The whole visit has been FLOP. That's it. There's been no outcome. It's been 0 by 0. No outcome, no Strait of Hormuz, no Strait of Trump, no Taiwan, nothing. It was just a visit, and he went on bragging that, the visit was very successful. We had some very useful discussions. What about Marco Rubio? He said something else. I think between the government, I saw two contradicting statements coming on the marks being given to the whole visit. So I think let it expire. Vineet, let me talk of my own country. We are not worried. We are absolutely fine. We've got many resources to import from. Fine, price is bothering us, for which we have. And Vineet, I'd like to tell you that the government has clarified that these are not austerity measures. These are strategic prudence measures. These are not austerity measures. So I think we are putting things in place. Our policies are being tweaked. We are doing the reforms accordingly. We are making sure that we are pushing the alternate energy. And I'm sure we'll come out as winners. It may be a temporary blip, a deterrent, I would say, an aberration for some time. But then eventually, we are going to come out of it. Our sovereignty is more dear to us than President Donald Trump's statements.
All right, passionate statement by Dr. Sharad Kohli there. Dr. Bhattacharya, do you recall a time when the world was, in a flux similar to what we are witnessing today? And do you think that, if this pattern continues, not only India, but there is going to be such a global reset, perhaps the one that happened in 2008 and 2009, that will directly, for times to come, be blamed on the current president of the United States, Donald Trump?
I think it's a very interesting question you asked, because also connected to your question is that the steps that are happening, is it because a reset has already happened? It's not that the steps are going to lead to a reset, and I'll back it up with why I am saying that the current changes that we are seeing geopolitically and the US administration stance is because of a reset that has already happened. If everybody listened to what my fellow panelists just said, including the former Assistant Secretary of the US, that the US is giving a free pass to China. And it is, it's not able to support its allies. It's not going against allies. It's not able to support its allies. What it really means is that the US has weakened and it is not able to stand up to adversaries. So whatever China is dictating, That is what the US administration is doing. In addition, if you see the genesis of the Iran conflict, it was at the insistence of Israel. That's very clear to everyone. So US could not stand up to the pressures of Israel. It could not stand up to the bullying by China. And like a typical bully itself, it could only throw its weight around its allies and not really around people that it needs to stand up to. So it's a bit of a disservice to the American people, and it's sad to see how the US has weakened up. And in addition, the former Assistant Secretary also mentioned about the lack of principles. If it is a principle to stop the exports from Russia in order to weaken Russia, to somehow reduce the number of people who are dying in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, well, then the US should also stop the uranium imports it's having. In fact, the calorific value of the uranium imports that the US is having from Russia is much more than the calorific value of the oil imports that India is having. And therefore, there is no parity, there is no principles that are set. And one is basically bending towards whoever they think they cannot stand up to, and they are throwing their weight on entities which would have been their potential allies, were their potential allies. And it has taken 25 years by the US diplomats and the Indian diplomats to bring that relationship back on track. And clearly India and US and many other democracies in the world are natural allies, but we don't see that panning out. Now, if you come to what's the impact happening on the ground, Russia was contributing about 7% of the global oil and oil product exports. So in that sense, it's not a very significant player. We should not undermine it. 7% is a lot of demand that it was satisfying, but it's still not very significant. But when you look at the impact on India, India was getting 30 to 40% of its import of energy from Russia. Same with Indonesia, same with many other friends of US. Now, when a country like India, which has got a massive amount of import happening, stops importing from Russia, obviously India will start importing from other countries, which have got limited flow of oil happening. And therefore, India will crowd out the demand from other countries. And therefore, the more vulnerable countries in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Latin Americas, and so on and so forth, will start feeling the pinch, and it'll lead to actually more deaths happening globally because of the lack of energy flowing through, which will impact the availability of food, the availability of many essential products, of medicines, and not just the fact that they move medicines and food and so on. They're also needed for manufacturing. We cannot have most of our critical medicines in our essential medicines list without having petrochemicals as an upstream product. Similarly,
right.
much of our fertilizers would need petrochemicals in order for our food delivery to happen, and therefore it's a very deep impact that will happen as the prices go up. And let's just keep in mind that from Jan till now, the prices of crude oil has gone up by 60%. That's very, very significant.
That's very significant.
So it could have an impact.
You're quite right, Dr. Bhattacharya. Mr. Vikri, what's perplexing to me is that the midterms are looming large in front of Donald Trump. His MAGA base is eroding very fast. Some of his supporters like Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Marjorie Taylor Greene have all jumped ship, but yet he has not taken any populist move, to placate the situation or even suggest that he does not want the world, specifically the Americans, to be unhappy. What's going on with Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, this is a mess that we as Americans have created, and we're going to have to rectify it in the first instance at the midterms. But you should recognize that there is a portion of the MAGA base which is as solidly behind President Trump as ever. He bragged that he could kill somebody in Fifth Avenue and they wouldn't go away from him, and that's proving quite right. There is a huge redistricting fight going on. In order to make up for his losses politically, what President Trump is doing is taking an axe to the roots of democracy here in the United States by attacking the electoral system. doing it not only through redistricting, but various measures to require proof of citizenship in order to register to vote. And then he is taking retribution against those who would not go along with him. In Indiana, he's just turned around in South Carolina. So we have to clean up the mess in part ourselves. But make no mistake about it, the United States and India, as the two largest and I would argue greatest democracies in the world, have so much in common and so many needs that they want to address, that they should address together, that it is not a solution to say, well, we'll go our way, you go yours, and that'll be done. What has to happen is that saner heads on both sides have to get us through this very rough patch, so that we can again assume the upward movement of the U.S.-India relations, which has been going on for the past 25, 30 years. We've moved from estrangement to partnership, and now we're in a very, very rough patch. But I would encourage my Indian friends and colleagues not to abandon the hope and what has been proven to be useful on both sides over the past 25, 30 years because of what is going on right now in this situation with President Trump. It will be corrected. We've weathered very rough patches before in the U.S.-India relations. We've weathered rough patches over 250 years. And democracy is going to kick in. The question is, will it be soon enough? And we need help in the United States from our democratic friends in India. Not to say that we'll just abandon this all because we're a sovereign nation and we can do as we please. That is not a solution in the long run.
You're absolutely right, sir. And I appreciate that you are looking at the glass half full. You're looking at the silver lining behind this dark cloud. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I deeply appreciate everybody who joined in. We've learned a lot and we've given away some valuable perspectives as well. Thank you, everyone.